Once upon a time, there lived a man named Ikenna, a man of great strength and power, respected far and wide for his bravery. He had 3 wives, Adago, Nkechi, and Amara, who had once lived peacefully under the same roof. They were different in their ways, but they all adored their husband. However, the peace in Ikenna's household was fragile. Unknown to him, jealousy had just started to creep into the hearts of his wives. It started with a small thing. Amara noticing how Ikenna always smiled at Adako's joke, or how Nkechi often had the first say in important decisions. These little things began to gnaw at Amara's heart, turning her love into envy. Amara had never felt this way before. She loved Ikenna deeply, but she couldn't stand the thought of him giving more attention to her co-wives. Her desire to be the one and the only burned within her, like a flame growing hotter with each passing day. She would often sit alone, watching Ikenna from a distance, wondering why she didn't have his full heart. One fateful evening, as the sun set behind the skyline, casting a long shadow over their home, Amara made a decision that would change everything. She was tired of being second in Ikenna's heart. She wanted to be the first. She wanted to be the only love. Little did she know that her desire would lead her down a dark and dangerous path, one that would shake the very foundation of their lives. Amara's jealousy grew like a poisonous vine in her heart. Each day, she found new reasons to resent Adako and Nkechi. Every laugh they shared with Ikenna, every single touch, and every word of praise made her feel more invisible. She had given Ikenna everything, yet it felt like her love wasn't enough to capture his full attention. One evening after a long day, Ikenna gathered his wives together for dinner. He smiled warmly at Adako, who had prepared his favorite dish. Nkechi sat by his side, her hand resting on his arm, and they shared a private joke. Amara, sitting quietly at the edge of the table, couldn't take it anymore. The sight of Ikenna smiling at them, the way he seemed to glow in their presence, it all felt like a cruel joke. How could he not see that she, too, wanted to be the center of his world? Later that night, after everyone had retired to their rooms, Amara lay wide awake in her bed, her mind churned with thoughts of her co-wives. What made them so special? Why did Ikenna seem to prefer their company over hers? It wasn't fair. As she tossed and turned, a dark thought crept into her mind. What if she could change things? What if she could make Ikenna love her more than anyone else? The idea seemed impossible, but the more she thought about it, the more it tempted her. The next morning, while fetching water from the city well, Amara overheard a group of women gossiping about Oni, the mysterious woman who lived on the outskirts of the city. They whispered about her powers, claiming she would perform magic that could bend people's will and change their fates. Amara's ear perked up. Could this Oni help her? Could she use magic to win Ikenna's heart completely? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. It was dangerous, but her jealousy had blinded her to the risk. If there was even a small chance that she could use her magic to make Ikenna hers alone, she had to try. That evening, while the city buzzed with its usual energy, Amara slipped out of the house. She had made up her mind she would find Oni and seek her help, no matter the cost. As she made her way through the winding streets, her heart raced with anticipation. She knew what she was going to do was risky, but she didn't care. She was desperate to have Ikenna's undivided love, and she would stop at nothing to get it. The path to Oni's home was dark and winding, lined with overgrown bushes and shadows that seemed to stretch and shift in the moonlight. Amara hesitated for a moment as she approached the small crooked house that stood at the very edge of the city. It looked abandoned, yet she knew Onyi was inside waiting. Amara knocked softly on the door, her heart pounding in her chest. After a long silence, the door creaked open, revealing a woman wrapped in a faded shawl. Onyi's eyes glimmered in the dim light, and her expression was unreadable. "So you have come to me," Onyi said in a voice that was both soft and sharp, like a whisper carried on the wind. "I know why you are here." Amara's breath caught in her throat. How could she possibly know? Onyi stepped aside, motioning for Amara to enter. The inside of the house was just as airy as its exterior. Dark, simple, carved into the walls, and candles flickering in all directions. "I've seen your hearts," Onyi continued as she led Amara to a small table. "You want your husband to love only you." Amara nodded slowly, her throat dry with fear and excitement. "Can you help me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Onyi smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I can give you what you want," she said, her fingers blushing over a small black jar on the table. "But know this, magic comes with a price. Are you willing to pay?" Amara's mind raced. She had heard the stories of people who meddled with dark magic, of how it could take more than it gave, but her jealousy had clouded her judgment, and all she could think about was winning Ikenna's love completely. "I am willing," she said, her voice trembling. "I will do whatever it takes." Onyi nodded and opened the jar, revealing a strange powder inside. "This will make him yours," she said, "but once you start, there's no going back. Are you sure you want this?" Amara hesitated for only a moment before nodding. She was sure. Onyi handed her the powder and whispered the instructions. "Slip this into his drink tonight, but remember, once the smell is cast, you cannot undo it. Ikenna will be bound to you in every way you cannot imagine." Amara took the jar, her hands shaking. She thanked Onyi and hurried out of the house, her mind racing with possibilities of what was to come. She had the power now. Ikenna would be hers. But as she made her way back home, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. Was this really what she wanted? And could she handle the consequences of the dark magic she had unleashed? That night, as the household gathered for dinner, Amara's heart raced with anticipation. The small jar of powder sat behind in the fold of her dress, its weight pressing against her like a secret she could hardly bear to carry. Ikenna sat at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence filling the room. Adako and Nneka chatted happily as they served him, but Amara barely noticed. Her focus was on the drink that would soon carry the spell she had so desperately sought. When the time came, Amara moved quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she poured the powder into Ikenna's cup. It dissolved instantly, disappearing as if it had never been there at all. Her heart pounded as she handed Ikenna the drink, her eyes fixed on his face. He smiled at her, unaware of the betrayal that was about to unfold. As he raised the cup to his lips, Amara held her breath. This was it, the moment she had waited for. Ikenna drank deeply, his expression calm and content, but as the minutes passed, a strange look crossed his face. He blinked his brows, furrowing as if something was wrong. Amara's heart skipped a beat. Was the spell working, or had something gone terribly wrong? Without warning, Ikenna's hand trembled, and the cup slipped from his grip, crashing to the floor. A stunned silence filled the room as he stood up, his body swaying unsteadily. "Ikenna!" Adako's voice was filled with concern. Nkechi rushed to his side, but Ikenna pushed her away. his eyes wide with confusion and pain. Something was very wrong. Amara's breath caught in her throat. The spell had begun. Ikenna stumbled back, clenching his chest as if an invisible voice squeezed the life out of him. His face contorted with pain, and he gasped for air. Adaku and Nkechi rushed to his side, but he pushed them away with a strength that startled them all. "Don't touch me," Ikenna roared, his voice strained as if something deep within him was fighting to escape. Amara stood frozen at the table, watching the scene unfold with growing dread. She had wanted Ikenna's love, but this was not what she had imagined. The room filled with tension, the air thick with fear and confusion. What had she done? As Ikenna stumbled towards the door, he collapsed to his knees, groaning in pain. His wife screamed, her faces filled with panic, but no one knew what was happening to him. Adak ran to call for help, while Nkechi remained by his side, her hands trembling as she tried to soothe him. Amara felt as if the walls were closing in around her. The powder, was it too much? Was the magic working, or had it gone horribly wrong? Suddenly, Ikenna's eyes snapped open, glowing with an eerie light. He looked up at Amara, his gaze piercing as if he could see through her soul. "You, what have you done?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through her like a blade. Amara's heart raced as she took a step back. I didn't mean for this," but Ikenna's words trailed off and he collapsed to the floor unconscious. The house fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of Nkechi's sobbing. Adak rushed back in with the city healer, a middle-aged man with graying hair and wise eye. He knelt by Ikenna's side, his hands moving over the warrior's body as he tried to assess the damage. Tell us where you are watching from, because it will help us to know when to post another story.